Greetings, my friend. Welcome to the Secret Shop.
Hello and welcome to the Secret Shop podcast, aptly named this time. Joining me, as always, is Anga. Hello, Anga.
Hello, what's popping?
And finally, people have been waiting for you to bring that back. Bring it back.
What's popping?
What's popping, gamer? Kiwi, happy to have you.
Always glad to be here.
Awesome. And we are finally synced up again with our audience. We have been recording consistently, and now you should get us just a day or two after we actually record. We're very happy about that. So let's get into this week's blog post. Let's shop. Finally, they're tackling the secret shop and the shop at large. But first of all, let's actually screw that, okay? Let's get into the important part of the blog post, which is Cymen was right. Arc Warden has won the poll. I knew that the community was full of intelligent individuals with a discerning eye. Right? But, let's give credit where it's due. Nix has been able to climb up to a narrow second place, I presume, because apparently propaganda works.
Of course.
Of course. I'm German. I can attest to that. So we are actually getting 2 new heroes in the upcoming beta, whenever that is. When do you guys think the beta is going to drop? Anga, what do you think? Any timetable in your mind?
I don't know. Now with the news about the shop and stuff, what more is there for them to reveal? I'm thinking it's pretty close. I don't know, 2 weeks to a month? I think it's pretty close.
I think 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, my expectation, before they start letting people in, not before everybody's in.
You know what? A month from now, that's my final answer. Exactly 4 weeks from now.
Nice. See, that's also my estimate currently, I think end of May, maybe start of next month. However, you are right, Anga, there's not too much left to really discuss unless they go into more card and mechanic reveals. They could do mechanics part 2, right? Because they do reveal a few more keywords here too.
They could do card reveals for months if they wanted to. I don't think they will, but
people will get tired of that really fast.
But they could do it. Yeah.
Oh man, can you imagine if there's another card reveal season that is just as toxic as last time, where people that Reddit has never heard of suddenly reveal cards, and they're like, how did they get the privilege of revealing cards?
You throwing shade at me right now, Cymen?
I was gonna say, didn't that no-name YouTube lore master get to do a card release?
I mean...
Wow, who picked you? How come you got to release a card? What was your card release?
Iron Branch Protection. But it has good lore, okay? Card. I got it because it has good lore on it, because it revealed some crucial information.
It better have good lore, because it sure didn't have anything else.
Ooh.
Well, didn't you say you sometimes play it in draft?
Yes, I did. It's cross lane. You can outplay people with it, but still pretty garbage tier.
So we're not getting 4 new heroes, but we're getting 2 new heroes. That's still nice. But let's get to the meat of the blog post. And I gotta say, there's a lot of meat on here. This is huge. So let's get into the shop. They're actually saying that the shop gave them the most varied feedback, because some people wanted minor tweaks and other people wanted a big overhaul of the whole thing, basically. Before we go into what they didn't like and what they liked about things, what did you guys think about the implementation of the shop in Artifact?
Criticisms that it was just more stats were accurate. I think there was a lot more freedom to have items be more exciting, or to potentially build them throughout the game, whereas having items just be a direct win condition like Horn or even Helm seems a little strong and inconsistent.
Right.
Which is not... I like things where your decision-making can consistently lead to good outcomes.
Yeah, I think I liked the idea of the shop a lot. In a card game, having both mana, cards and items as resources and gold. But I think the way it was implemented, as some of the things they have talked about here, like for example having cheap items to buy through your item deck to get to like your blinks or whatever, it got too, I don't like to blame RNG, but the shop was too much RNG in my opinion.
Go ahead. Like, that was a huge criticism, and there's a reason why they mention it here. Especially when it comes to essentials such as Blink Dagger or Town Portal Scroll.
It also wasn't exciting, like, disregarding being mono black and spending 100 gold in a turn.
I love it.
The shopping phase is never exciting. Like, what's better than maybe a musket, where like Blink moving stuff around is kind of cool, but when it's an auto include in every deck, then it's absurd. They missed a lot of potential on it, and I wouldn't have known what they would solve it with, and it didn't seem awful, but it didn't add anything to the game where it definitely could have, in my opinion.
The most fun I ever got from the shop on its own was when the secret shop, like that leftmost slot, would offer me like the perfect item that I didn't have in my item deck for the situation. You know, that wonderful item top deck where it's like you get the Seraph shield or whatever, and it just dunks the damage of the whole lane down and you survive and you win. Wonderful. And that is why they're actually saying they do want some randomness in the shop still.
That felt awful from the other side, though, right? Especially in a tournament setting, having games decided by that was horrendous. It felt, however nice it feels for you, if it feels worse for your opponent, I think that's not going to be good in the long term.
Exactly. I'm going to be the first to admit that I am the guy who complains the most about bad RNG. Yeah, it feels good when you're on the good side of it, but honestly, I get so salty from it. So I totally get it, which is why some people like months and even a year back were suggesting something like both players should get the same choice for the secret shop, so you could at least play around what you know the other person just got, right? But there's no reason to speculate anymore because they are revealing their changes to us. First of all, just something that they did like about the secret shop, which I did like as well, is like the development of a hero, right? The way that you build them up and they become stronger over the course of the game. And especially when you look at a late game board, providing that you actually had some of the more fun items in the game and not just the small stat boosters, which was one of the problems. You actually had some very interesting boards at the end with like different active and passive abilities from the items. And that's something that they want to keep. So they are revealing the new goals for this new version. I'm just gonna go through these one by one for now. They want us to have better access to our items compared to the original game. I'm not sure what they mean by our items. Like, I assume they still mean our item deck?
I would assume so. So you would probably have more option to choose them rather than having them just be a 1 in 9 chance to get them on top of your deck.
They still want us to keep the ability to find that random item which may help us out. So it looks like the secret shop slot will remain, at least from what I'm reading here. And the rest is basically just saying, we want items of the same tier, of the same cost, to be about the same power level, the same kind of value. So this is basically just talking about balance and admits that balance wasn't quite where they wanted it to be when it comes to cost and usefulness of items in the current version of the game.
As well, they mentioned that required tools like Town Portal Scroll, or as they reference elsewhere, Blink Dagger, shouldn't be available based on luck. And so they're going to give everybody even access to those.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
not Blink,
super important.
Just to the important tools.
Which is why I want your hot takes on one major change that they mention. For the most part, there's no more consumables.
I think that's good. Yeah, I don't mind. I think that's a good change. When it comes to like the, what's it called, Potion of Knowledge and Town Portal Scroll, I really like having them out of the game, but I don't know how it will be like without a heal. That's the only thing I'm a bit worried about. I don't know.
Flasks were really obnoxious on high health heroes sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to miss it. There were different ways that they could have worked around this, either through being able to see multiple items from it or having matching shops, or that there's a certain stock of each one or something. But it sounds like there will be different forms, things that will be replacing these, but consumables, as we know, are gone.
I think the greatest problem with consumables was not the items themselves, but the way that they were presented in this uncontrollable rotation of consumables in the consumable slot. Because you had no control over that, and sometimes your heroes got stranded. Arguably, that was also the fault of people who didn't quite know how to think ahead with deployment, but I think we've gone past the point where we blame the players. I think this is overall a very good change. I wouldn't be surprised if consumables pop back up in a different place. So now items are divided into different tiers, different costs. This was actually also one of the things that they didn't like, which is like the wildly different and inconsistent costs of items. So now they're going in like 5 gold steps. 10 gold, 15 gold, 20 gold, 25, and 30. And they want cheap items to be all about giving you that little bit of an edge in early rounds, but they want the expensive items to be potential game finishers, which was interesting to me, because beforehand you were only talking about finishers when it comes to like high mana spells. And now they're talking about items being finishers. What kind of items would you have called finishers in Artifact 1.0? The horn?
Horn. Helm, situationally, not necessarily an immediate finisher, but usually pretty quick. A Vesture as well, super impactful.
Oh yeah, that tower armor is very
Depending
valuable.
on the list. Not just that, but the immediate deploy is so sticky tower armor, or just a sticky unit.
And next, they're actually giving us a look at this work in progress UI for the new shop. First of all, they're saying that this whole shop rework is actually one of their most recent changes. So this, even more so than the other things that they have introduced so far, this is subject to change the most, which is why they want your valuable feedback. Please send it in.
It's a very safe thing for them to say, because if people don't like it, then they can hold on to hope that things will be changed. Or if, as a whole, the community doesn't like parts of it, then we'll be able to adjust them. This is the most change we've seen anywhere. I was saying, imagine if we'd seen this post alongside the first post, right? It would have been so overwhelming. Everybody would have been horrified and grossed out, and it would have seemed awful. But after the last 6 weeks of showing us that the game is still essentially the same game and they're just overhauling the shop system, I think it's really good.
Yeah,
they were priming us for this, preparing us slowly.
They're still preparing us slowly. There's so many questions left from this post.
I love the invest thing. Is that something somebody has been posting about on Reddit or something? Because I haven't heard about that before, but that's so genius.
I heard a lot about that on r/Wall Street Bet.
But that's so genius, having the ability to invest instead of spending gold.
Yeah. This is basically the pass button, right? So if you ever feel like you don't want to spend any money, you just click the invest button and you get some extra gold for next round.
But maybe 3 is a little bit too little. Maybe it should be 5.
Well, we don't know the scale.
Out.
We don't know the
All these
scale of
things can
things.
be adjusted as well.
Yeah.
Like the numbers are not what to focus on specifically.
Yeah. And they're already saying that people will have way more gold after every round, which I assume is implying that there's going to be some passive gold gain rather than
that's what
just
I mean,
being
though.
tied.
Because there will be more gold in the game. 3 gold doesn't seem like anything. Like, if we're going to get 30 cost items and it starts at 10, 3 gold is nothing.
Well, but you're getting it for doing nothing, though.
It's good because the shop will never have a bad outcome. Either there's items in there that you want, or you get to upgrade to future items that you want, or if you don't want either of those choices, you invest. Removing being locked out of the shop or blocked.
But how about, invest implies that you spend gold now and you get more return for it later. Shouldn't it be that you either every time you click invest, you get more from it, or that when you invest, it's a percentage of the amount of gold you have? Like earning 3 gold, that's not investing.
You're investing into your future.
But then it should be something more around investing.
Okay, just call it save up then. Oh my god. Let's call it like I don't know, withdrawal or whatever. So this is literally just about vocabulary.
Speaking of vocabulary, this area is quite ambiguous and there's lots of different ways to interpret it. What is your take on this? So it specifically says items are grouped based on their tier and the shop is populated to have one or more items at each tier plus your item deck. So is this interface the secret shop itself, and we have our own separate shop for our items? Are our items in this shop as well? It specifically says one or more, which means either we can be able to buy more slots for the shop, or there'll be more slots when we upgrade it, or our personal shop is going to be completely separate from the secret shop because it would say one or two if one of these slots was already on our deck. There's many questions.
So let's actually start from the bottom a little bit, because now the secret shop itself actually has levels. At first, it looks like you get the 3 slots just like before, except that the consumable slot doesn't exist anymore. So I have to assume that this first rightmost slot is the tier 1 10 cost slot, because that's what it looks like with the 10 cost. That the middle is still the item deck, and perhaps the left one is still the secret shop that gives you a totally random item, because they do say that they like that concept. And you get the ability to upgrade for 5 gold, but this reduces by 1 gold with every round that you don't do it until it's dirt cheap for 1 gold. But the other player may spend a little extra earlier to get ahead in shop levels. An interesting mechanic here. And you can re-roll the selection that you get for all slots that you have available, I assume, for 2 gold, because we're Underlords now.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I wonder if this will mean that, depending on your deck, you might want to stay level 1 for a long time and get lots of cheap items, and other decks you want to just upgrade and save your money as much as possible just to get the one finishing item. I really like that.
I completely agree. I think that this is going to snowball into deck building, where not even the items that you put in your deck, but the heroes and your actual card deck is going to have game plans that are either like early game plans or mid game plans or late game plans that line up with the shop and what your plan for shopping is. And so say in the archetype of red, you're going to have an aggro red list that's going to stay lower level and not depend on later items, and that would have different heroes than a mid-tier or a late-tier red list that's going to be more focused on TOT and stuff. I think we're going to see many archetypes within each color or set of colors, which is not something we have at the moment. I'm really excited for what the constructed meta is going to look like, and I feel like this is going to overflow into really complex deck building.
And I think that, like, once again, on the one hand, they are making the shop more accessible, but on the other hand, they're adding so much more to it as well. Before, when, like last week, we talked about Black Econ and just buying out the shop, right? But now you have this whole like econ game on top of the actual game, to the point where you're like in an economy race with the other player potentially, where you're trying to get ahead on shop levels and get to those higher tier items faster. It's really interesting, and I wonder what this does to the game and like to this little bit of bluffing. I don't know, because before, like Black Econ, like Gold Econ was kind of flat. Like either you got rich and you just buy out the shop and now it doesn't matter anymore. After like 2 rounds, you just buy out your entire item deck and now you're like reliant on whatever the secret shop gives you and the consumables, and the rest doesn't matter anymore. But now there's like several layers to the secret shop and what you might get.
Do you think when you click upgrade, do you immediately get new upgraded items, or do you have to wait around?
You do not get new items immediately. However, they do say that you get a free reroll if you want it.
Yeah, but because that means that you can't ever have a deck where you can rush out the big boy items early.
Yeah, I
you
believe
don't
so.
Rush. Yeah.
I believe you can't get a helm early unless your shop is separate from the secret shop. I'm not sure if the secret shop tiers are going to impact what tiers of items you can get from your own list, or if it'll be separate. Yeah, it sounds like you can potentially reroll it that turn, but it says that it adds the next tier of items to the pool, so your secret shop pool is going to have tier 1 and tier 2 when you level it once.
Like, that's the thing. I'm a little... There is still a lot of ambiguity here, because at first I thought that by upgrading it, you would literally get a new slot in the shop.
I think it just changes what items are rolling in the shop. I personally think that your shop is not in this interface and is separate, but I don't know. They would have said 1 or 2 items in the secret shop, not 1 or more, right? More than 2 is 3. We see 3 here. So unless this interface is going to change, there isn't room for there to be 3 items in here that aren't your shop.
What do you mean by your shop?
Your item deck.
Right, okay.
This specifically says secret shop. And I'm not sure if the secret shop will be separate from the items in your deck.
So you think you may have to upgrade the shop just to unlock the ability to get to the high tier items that you put in your item deck?
I have no idea about that. That could be either way. But to get the high tier items in this shop, you have to have it upgraded. And so we were talking earlier about how some people dislike the random RNG source of the secret shop before, right? Where, say, you get a kill with bounty on turn 1, you get a golden ticket, you get a horn, and the game's over or something. That's obviously the outlier case, but they've doubled down on the secret shop, and I really like it. And instead, I think what they're going for is consistency. They want you to have to make situational decisions on what items they're offering you in the secret shop, but none of those, like, they'll each be situational, and you'll be making decisions based on how your game is going, and there'll be different situations each time. Or you won't be offered anything and you'll level up, or you'll invest instead. There won't be the high roll aspect of you've got a bunch of gold and you get a horn on round 4 or something. It's going to be a lot more stable and consistent, but they're adding decision-making to the shopping phase.
Yeah, I'm seeing that now. It's the next tier simply added to the pool. This really does feel like Underlords, doesn't it?
This aspect of it does. For people, that is concerning too, regardless of if you like or dislike Underlords. It has some good qualities and some bad qualities. This is still just the shopping phase. Yes, it looks complicated right now. We haven't played it, so it's still not the main focus of the game. The other thing I really like about it is it gives the potential for making our heroes feel stronger throughout the game, making it feel more like a MOBA. When we play Runeterra, it was apparent how much more exciting the heroes were, and it didn't, like, we didn't want Artifact to just copy that, but we also wanted our heroes to be more exciting, or to have more of a feel like where you're investing in them, you're building in them for the duration of the game. And so this kind of does that, right? We get to have stronger items. I'm curious if there will be item combinations. I expect not, because of the complexity of that, but that could be exciting too, where you're combining a couple tier 1 items to make a stronger item later.
Yeah, that is definitely a concept they could add later, at least. What if you have to build towards your Divine Rapier, so you can throw the game in style? That's gotta be an option.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's too easy to throw an artifact currently.
I personally always liked the implementation of heroes and items in Artifact. Like, items were kind of flat, because a lot of Artifact effects were kind of flat with the first set and very stat-based. So I'm just happy that they're making the game overall more exciting by giving the heroes more variety and fun mechanics, and also the items. Which brings us to the items that they're actually trying to show off to us. They want to show us, like, one item from the first 3 tiers, which is actually giving us an idea of just how powerful the items beyond tier 3 might be. So let's get into it with Force Staff. Anger, would you like to describe Force Staff to our listeners?
What does the blue one, that's the tier, right?
No, that is the mana, I'd say, right?
I believe
is
the
it?
black color is the tier.
Oh.
It costs 1 mana to equip it.
Okay, yeah. First off is a 1 mana cost item that is an attack item. It costs 10 gold, and it has an active ability that has a 2-round cooldown, costs 1 mana, and it makes you displace a unit.
What's displacing?
Maybe it just means you can move them around to where you want.
No, I mean, they do describe what displacing is. I was giving you a segue.
Oh.
They're saying displacing is a new keyword, which is one of the few new random effects. Just wonderful. I love how people have been celebrating the removal of randomness from Artifact. We are saved. And now this post definitely adds some of that randomness back in, which is good, because let's remember, every game like this, at least card games, should have some randomness. There is some value to that. There's plenty of videos and articles you can read on the subject, but we won't dive into it right now. So displace is a new keyword, which basically means you push a unit randomly 1 slot left or right. It can only be pushed into a spot which is unoccupied, so usually you will know exactly where you're pushing them, unless you are taking the risk and there's 2 possible spots and now it's 50-50.
Can also definitely be used on your own unit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have choices how to use it. The utility sounds cool. I like that thematically, Force Staff usually matches blue heroes in Dota. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're putting this on a Prelix sitting in front of a big angry Ursa bear or something, and you push him away, or you move yourself over one, and then he can't hit you. I don't think the randomness is going to be a factor at all, because either there'll be 2 outcomes that won't matter most of the time, or you'll use it differently so that you can force it only on one side.
Do you think, because I can't remember where I read it in this post, somewhere it said something about having different slots for different like weapons and like attack, health, and armor for heroes. Do you think you can only equip 1 item now, or like how will they do that with attack and health if there's not going to be attack and health spot?
All they said was earlier in the blog post that this is something which was confusing to new players.
Oh, so they haven't said they would change it?
They did not directly say they would change it. They just said that this was a consideration. And looking at the cards that they introduced to us, there's still the 3 slots. There's still attack, health, and armor.
Oh, yeah, there is, yeah.
Almost as if they want to reassure us that they haven't actually changed that part of it. Perhaps they have changed something about it, but here's the thing. When it comes to confusing elements for new players, you can often fix it through UI, or just make it more obvious in a way. Like, all they need to do is basically highlight that icon or the slots on the UI whenever you try to drag it.
They also have the tutorial for that, for the unlocking.
True.
So they can teach people whatever they need.
Valve tutorials, of course. So Force Staff seems to add there's a lot of ways to use it, because you can use it on your own units and on enemy units for attack or defensively. Like, even though it's a low tier item with only 10 gold, this is gonna make and break some games.
I'm excited for Force Staff. Force Staff is just always a phenomenal item.
I don't know, I wouldn't know. I don't play heroes that use Force Staff.
Force Staff is viable on every hero.
What does that mean? You don't play heroes that use Force Staff? Does that mean you're not like...
That means Anger doesn't use... She doesn't buy items that have active abilities on them.
And I don't play heroes that have lots of active abilities either. I only play heroes that have 2 active abilities. Except PA. Except PA. She's the only exception. She used to have
only
only
has
2.
2.
No, she got another one, a new one. But I don't use it. I don't use it, so it's fine.
Third one? Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Let's go to the next tier. Like, only 2nd tier. Like, Force Staff, tier 1, and now tier 2, the Necronomicon. Kiwi, would you like to dive into this one?
Deploy the Demonic Archer instead of melee creeps. The plurals here refer specifically to over multiple rounds, or say you have a Kana or Prelix, but not across multiple lanes. This is specific to a single lane. Still seems pretty good. You're gonna ruin deck equilibrium immediately. The art is fantastic.
It looks like me when I'm pooping.
Demon Archer has a mana cost, probably for if you bounce him with Defenestrating Ogre or something.
He could also just be a creep you can put in your deck.
Perhaps.
It's possible. Something weird here is that the rarity symbol is green in the background.
Ooh, I didn't notice that.
The following card is the same, but we don't know why. Also, the background of Necronomicon is green. Initially, thought was that maybe green is health, and black is weapons, and blue is armor, but I don't think that's the case because in the secret shop picture, the Revtel Mercenary contract is also black, so it appears that it's based on the tier. Black is tier 1, green is tier 2, blue is tier 3.
Yeah.
Do you remember the sheepstick card? Did it have a pink background or something? Maybe they hadn't even put that in yet? I don't have it.
Wait, is that a 25 cost, right?
Yeah, so it should have a different color background.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
And this one with tier 2 costs 15 gold. And what's surprising to me is that it gives you 6 health, but they say that this is, at least in this version of Artifact, this is like a hefty amount of health, which will allow heroes to stay in lane much longer, because attack values are so much, and attack values are so much lower than they were before.
Do you think health and attack stats will be similar across multiple items, or I think more likely that they'll be varying numbers based on the strength of the item? And so they'll have different stats rather than different costs.
Yeah, I think so too. I think because I think that all 3 of these items are actually already pretty darn powerful. And just to think that we're only going to tier 3 and there's 3 more to go? Or 2 more to go? Jesus.
2 more. Everything seems powerful in new artifact.
Exactly. But let's look a little closer at the demonic archer, because it actually has a trigger on round start, which is dealing 1 damage to the closest enemy, which is a new kind of wording, by the way. I assume that closest enemy means prioritizing the blocking unit, and if there isn't a blocking unit, it would attack either one of the enemy neighbors.
Do you think if it's the case where it hits the enemy neighbors, do you think it's random if they're both the same, or do you think it prioritizes left to right? Also, is this potentially going to be cross lane? If there's nobody else in your lane, then could it hit one that's 1 slot over to the left?
I don't think so.
Unless stated so. Yeah.
Exactly, Anger. They said they would specify if there was ever any cross lane effect to that.
Okay, so it will hit the closest one in its lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the new default, right? They don't want to print in this lane on every card, so they made that the default.
It'll easily kill the creep, so it'll easily change creep equilibrium, and so it'll be really strong in decks that, like green decks, sort of thing. Could be. Or it can be good in black decks that struggle to have creep, where it can just make bodies so useful.
Do you think there will be more cards like this that affect the kind of creeps that are deployed? Because considering the puzzles and stuff and having the different kinds there, do you think there will be one that makes you summon Vools or Aglodes like this?
Yes.
That sounds
Maybe
really
not
fun.
Right away.
That would be so cool.
Yeah. That would be very flavorful and fun. And it would make Kana and Prelax, assuming they still have their creep spawn abilities, very valuable in those kinds of decks.
I was just thinking about that. Maybe instead of them changing how many creeps are there, they change the stats on the creeps. And so maybe having Kana there is that your creeps are 2/2 in this lane, or Prelax there. And so when we were talking about stacking a couple episodes ago, that was not wrong, but you'll just impact what the 1/1 is and if it's a 1/1 or not.
Yeah.
What if Kana just buffs a random creep in the lane to become a super dire creep, which is Kana's pet from Underlords?
Wait, what are you talking about?
Kana's pet from Underlords, it's like the highest level unlock there is in Underlords. It's like this massive super dire creep.
But our pet is Earthshaker. Oh my god, are Underlords fucking up again, rewriting the lore?
I'm pretty sure that Earthshaker was more than a pet. Thank you very much. He talks.
He's our champion.
Exactly, not her pet. That's a bit demeaning.
Wait,
Come
but
on,
what's
man.
this pet in Underlords? Is that new? Where did you find that?
That's in
It's
the
just
battle
a-
pass
It's just a
Oh.
map.
decoration.
So it actually says on the cosmetic that it's Connor's pet.
It's just a big dire looking mega creep looking thing that says Kana's pet. That's all.
And there's a Prelix one too, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's
there
not
is.
Champion of the Ancient?
It is actually, yeah.
Oh,
Pretty much.
It looks
Okay.
kind of like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
okay. Well,
And yeah,
then I guess it's
yeah,
fine.
just getting back to the demonic archer, it's really strong against the normal creeps because it's got 1 health more, it's gonna survive 2 attack, and at the start of the round, it's just gonna kill one of them immediately.
Also, it eats footballs.
Oh, I see. You mean a hand egg?
Something like that.
Because a football is round.
Yes, sorry, I mentioned American football. My bad.
Yes. Let's look at the next item, the tier 3 item for 20 gold, and it's Root Boots. It provides 2 armor and an aura, which reads, adjacent enemies are rooted and have +2 decay, which, if you remember, is the negative regeneration, which we assume to trigger around combat.
Adjacent is the 3 squares across from you, or only the 1 across from you?
I was actually wondering the same thing because they're not using the enemy neighbor wording
using
here
plural.
anymore.
I'm supposed to know this.
They're using
It's
pure
supposed to be
plural,
obvious to
though.
me.
It has to be the enemy neighbors.
Adjacent enemies, right? It's gotta be all 3.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
they're just getting around the enemy neighbor word because that was like
That's
new
confusing.
to Artifact, and adjacent is more natural to people coming into the game.
What do you think rooting does?
Well, they already talked about that in an earlier blog post. It prevents movement,
Well, yeah, but we don't know much more than that.
but it prevents movement.
Because if
Yeah.
it only prevents movement, this looks kind of shit.
Not if you've got a 4 staff and you want to kill your enemy. If you're a black hero or a red hero, you don't want the annoying heroes to be 4 staffing out of the way every time. Rooting them means you're able to kill them.
For 20 gold, I think this looks kind of shit if it only prevents movement. Because it will
Well-
only be the enemy neighbors of the one with this item.
Well, imagine if they've got like a smelly Marana on their team and you can never catch her. This is how you counter it. And this shows up in your secret shop and you're like, wow, they've got a Marana. How do I kill this stupid hero? Keeps bouncing around and has Jimmy on her team refreshing it. Then you're like, okay, I've got 20 golden root boots. We equip the root boots and Marana can't do her leap and get lethal in the last lane or something. Like, they're
Yeah.
making many situational items that you can make decisions towards.
Yeah.
Is the
Besides, it provides you with 2 armor and also +2 decay, which goes around enemy armor. So it could actually start melting heroes that have very high armor. Like, they're also saying this would clear out creeps in a lane where the whole lane got buffed with armor, like with the new Treant, for example, or something. Would just
Right,
go
it
all
would
around that.
kill them through. That's actually a really
Yeah.
good point.
Exactly. It would kill those creeps or heroes through their armor at combat by
Not the
decaying their
counter to
health.
tree. It's ironic that root boots are the counter to tree.
I know, right?
Oh!
Also, the name is such a meme. Like,
Root boots.
just I'm excited for.
and
new
they're 2
items.
little boots
You know
with
what's
one
also
of
a
their
meme?
eyes.
They fucking have sinister eyes. Looks so
I'm
fun.
excited for the actual art on this card.
I know.
Do you think they die if you pull them too far apart? Because they're like one face.
No,
Asking the real questions. I love it.
And do you think the tentacles are like the creature's hands?
But I think they would be very sad if you separated them.
yeah. If you lost one of your root boots,
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe that's why in Dota you only buy 1 brown boot. Because if you bought 2 brown boots, it would become root boot.
Wow. The brown boot is really just a separated root boots.
Yeah.
A separated pair of root boots.
how long until we get root boots in Dota?
The thing is, like, we have something very close to this, which is the new Woodland Striders, right?
Oh,
Woodland
I'm not up to
Striders?
date on the recent patch.
Yeah, those are like the new kind of boot that allow you to run through trees, and they also place trees behind you. It's one of the new neutral items.
Oh.
But that's not
If I
like
remember
root boots.
correctly.
That doesn't hold people.
I
guess
know,
that
but
does
it's
hold
like
people in
plant
place.
boots. It's like plant boots. Once is like woodland boots, and now we have root boots.
I think they're two separate items thematically.
No,
But
they're
it
not
could be wrong.
separate.
I'm looking
They're
forward
together.
Two
to...
separate pairs of boots. My bad, Anger. I'll never
Right.
separate the boots.
If Skywrath wore the root boots, would he be able to make the roots grow? Or do you think they have to be connected to the ground?
Kyrath doesn't wear boots.
I think they're magic and they don't have to be connected to anything.
Maybe he just stops flying for a second.
That would be kind of dumb though, like running around with your root boots, and then when you want to root someone, you have to make sure like you have both feet on the ground.
Well,
like,
what
you have to
about
just
all the
stand
heroes
still.
that have 4 legs? Or
What
like,
about those that don't
Mirana?
have no legs?
What about Mirana? Does she wear the boots, or does her cat wear the boots? You're getting into
Sagan.
dangerous
Or what about
territory
Io?
here, Anger.
How would Io wear them?
How would you wear them? Oh, Io. Yeah.
But then it would be Puss in Boots.
Oh,
Mirana's cat. What's her name? Why don't I know Mirana's cat's
Sagan.
name? Sagan, right. We overlooked a couple items that
Yes,
were
we
shown
did.
in the secret shop.
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Hook net, 10 gold, 2 attack weapon, round start. I'm enjoying this round start. It's kind of the opposite of upkeep. Not the opposite, it's just like adjusted upkeep, I guess.
Yeah.
Disarm the closest enemy creep. And we're going to assume this means only in this lane. So if you have a demon
Yeah.
archer in that lane and it killed the creep, it won't do anything. Or it'll probably disarm the creep and then it'll kill it. Cool. It's, I don't know,
Is it?
disarming is going to have the same effect of snowballing lanes as well. So if your creeps are lining up 1-to-1 and you disarm their creep every turn, you're going to be gaining a net creep every turn.
Well, remember, this doesn't actually mean melee creeps. It means any creep, right?
Oh,
So
shit.
your Thunder Chad just got gimped.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you put, you'd have to be, wow, okay.
And this is-
Situational items, I'm loving it.
Tier 1.
Yeah, but it's going to be in your shop, in your secret shop forever. So you could get it on a later round, or you could buy it early and hold it forever.
Mhm.
Or you could just buy it early and use it as a weapon and then have it be useful elsewhere as well.
So once again, I thought this was useless at first as well. But then I remembered the whole differentiation between melee creep, and suddenly you can hold those powerful creatures they may have summoned. Anger, would you like to cover the leftmost item that is shown in the secret shop?
the Revtel Mercenary contract summons a Revtel Mercenary. Have we seen what the Revtel Mercenary looks like?
I wish we just get to imagine until next week.
What do you think the stats and ability is gonna be? Come on, let's
Aaron, but what was the name of those mercenaries that are in the game? Those former...
Mercenary Exiles.
Right, yeah.
3 minutes.
No,
Revtel
I think it's
Mercenary.
pretty pointless to discuss this card. We have no idea what it's gonna look like.
Yeah. But it only costs...
But we
can
forgot
predict.
about...
We can do a bet. I bet it's going to be a 2-3. No, that's too strong. A 2-2.
Really, is it?
It's going to be a 2-2. No, that's too weak because it's 10 gold as well. I'm not thinking about that.
But it could have an ability. It is a consumable, so you only get one of them. So it would have to be...
Okay, it's going to be much stronger than what I was suggesting, but I don't know
Right.
how strong. I have no
s-
idea.
Yeah. And I would assume the summon keyword would mean into a random open slot on the board. Because it doesn't summon it into your hand, it just summons it straight away.
But I think you'll be able to summon it to a slot.
Perhaps. Like, you could cast it
I don't
on
think
a
there's going to
slot.
be more random. I think you're going to cast it on a slot. Summon them into this spot.
But here's the thing about randomness in this post. Because as I said before, they are reintroducing a lot of random elements here, but all of those, literally every single one, is showing us how that randomness can be controlled and how the player can play around it. None of this is that bad kind of random where does it go? Nobody knows. I think it will be a random slot, but because you can control where things go beforehand, you will be able to predict where it goes, assuming there's only one slot left, or you can take your chances if that's what you want to do, and you are gonna have to deal with the consequences.
Do you think next week's post is going to be Secret Shop Week 2, Part 2? Like,
Really?
I feel like they have so many questions left unanswered here, and we need more information, but they didn't want to overload us all at once.
Because
Maybe
once
not
again,
next week,
yeah.
but soon.
Because I think once again they're just trying to tickle our balls a little bit, so we write more of that high quality feedback. I think they're just baiting people into writing more.
Mm-hmm. Have you written them?
I have actually not written them a letter yet, because I wanted to have a more complete picture of the whole thing. And in a way, our podcast, at least for me personally, kind of replaces the need to write them. However, I may compose a friendly message to them either way. Anga, have you?
I haven't, but I've also been considering sending just a nice message about how I appreciate their hard work.
Exactly.
I don't really
I have used this in other platforms for discussing my thoughts. I like to bounce ideas off people. I don't want to just send them
because that's another thing. Like, if I just sent in like my immediate thoughts, I know for a fact they would be shit. Like, I don't want them to take my bad advice, my immediate thoughts. I don't want them to actually look at that and think, okay, we should listen to this idiot.
I don't think my personal opinion my individual opinion is important either. The group of opinions, sorry, not the group, but like the overall opinion from everybody is important, but I don't think my individual opinion is important in this case.
Yeah.
Let's just hope that Valve actually listens to this podcast. Wouldn't that be nice?
If you're watching, hey.
If you're watching,
Anger's right on that.
Blink twice on Twitter.
Nice.
Let's do a little bit of cleanup, because this is a very meaty post, and there's actually a couple details that we have overlooked so far. For example, the blink scroll. Once the first tower drops to half health, you are given a free blink scroll, which is basically like a teleport scroll, except it's limited in a way. You can only teleport or blink a hero to an adjacent lane.
It's not like a teleport scroll. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's more like a blink, but I'm just saying I find it interesting that they felt the need to completely rename the thing rather than calling it a teleport scroll and just completely changing the way that teleport scrolls work. I just find it interesting that they felt the need to basically invent this new blink scroll just to more easily explain what they're trying to do with it.
Yeah, and especially because in Dota 2, the TP scroll just moves you around. It doesn't actually heal you, so there's no reason there's no reason for them to be attached to that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because you can just switch lanes. It doesn't always bring you back to base. This isn't that other game.
I think it makes sense to me.
Right. So, any thoughts on the blink scroll, Anga?
I really like it. I like we have talked about before, having the blink dagger as like a must-have in every deck is kind of dumb. And it also, if there's going to be like a similar draft to now, I like that then you will also have a way to move around other than TP scroll and a blink in the secret shop. And I like that it's kind of like, because is it only when the enemy tower is a half health, or is it your own too? Because then
enemy,
I don't know, I wonder if it maybe would be good if it's also they couldn't also have it for your own tower as well. No, never mind.
Your enemy would get it when it's your tower.
Yeah, it's only for enemy towers. And they're saying like for each enemy tower. So there's basically 2 chances, or you'll get it twice if you're...
There's 3.
You can get it 3 times. So this is interesting because in current artifact, there's no advantage to... Sometimes you'll get outmaneuvered and you'll be taking a lane, but too slowly to take it in an impactful time. And so here you'll get... There's some small reward for that edge case where you are taking a tower that's not important. This also helps you not be stuck in lanes for as long. And even though TP scroll currently is really strong, if your opponent knows exactly when you have it, they can play around it. And so then it makes it, I don't know, I like the idea of them when you can play around it. I think that's really good. As well, this will impact some decks like mono blue that don't do any damage until, they're doing 20 tower damage until turn 10. Decks of this sort where they just have an end game plan will not have that extra mobility given to them earlier in the game. And so aggro lists can utilize this. On top of that, lists that just want to go 80 in one lane will also not have access to these 2 scrolls, and so kind of balancing these little things out a little bit is good.
But I gotta say, it's getting to the point. I was very excited in the beginning when I heard about how much more movement there would be between lanes. But now it's getting to the point where I almost feel like deploying into a certain lane is nowhere near as big of a commitment as it was previously. Like
You only
now,
get 1 scroll.
but now you're like getting tossed these blink scrolls for free, basically as a consolation prize for getting a tower to half health. And there's so many more ways to move heroes around as well. You know, there's some heroes with built-in movement. There's still blink daggers. And I assume that there's going to be more cards of that sort as well, because they said that movement would be an even bigger thing in Artifact 2.0. So I do wonder about the balance of that between like meaningful commitment to a lane and this creative kind of movement.
I really enjoy games where there is a lot of mobility in them. The more committing to a lane and then being punished for it is frustrating, and having many ways of mobility leads to more ways to outplay each other or do interesting plays. I don't think 2 teleport scrolls in a usual game is going to be impactful.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be impactful, but I don't know if it's of concern. There's some interest that it's adjacent lane, and so middle lane will have more choice. Maybe middle lane becomes the lane focused from now, and so that will go back to deck building, to having a strong hero you can put in that lane.
All random, all mid.
Let's go, 5 heroes mid.
Let's go. Still, like, they already introduced stuff like the sticky Greevel, so there's definitely even cheap ways to prevent movement. We'll see.
What did Sticky Greevel do again?
The sticky Greevel was like a super cheap.
Yeah, what was the ability?
1 mana, 1/1, root your opponent.
Oh.
Yeah.
Speaking of Greevels, there's another Greevel at the top of this post.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've been noticing that obviously we're all loving the temporary MS Paint art, right? But it's very clear that either they still have a treasure trove of high quality art from, let's call it last season, which is very likely because they were very close to finishing the second set, blah, blah, blah. Or they are already reaching out to artists and contractors and freelancers to create new art for them. I'm very excited about that, especially because we saw how quickly they were able to mobilize people for Underlords, actually. Like all that art they got for the Underlords wanted posters, for example. They actually were able to mobilize a lot of community favorites and people from outside to create a lot of fun and varied art for them. So I'm looking forward to that.
What better time than when everybody's stuck at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been noticing that on almost every single subreddit that I frequent. Just way more art. Way more.
I've found that too. In many communities, all the artists come out and are hitting beautiful work.
Exactly. Really, just absolutely wonderful. This particular piece looks like it's probably from Valve's internal artists, because it seems to be consistent in style to most of their official artwork. But anyways, that's just my speculation. Remember, guys, to send Valve your feedback using their website, their email address. We'll put that into the description. But also don't forget to write us. We would love to hear from you. Positive and negative feedback is all appreciated. Anger, where can people find your stuff? Well, what do you do? What do you do anymore?
I make lore videos on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/angermania.
Nice. And Kiwi, what do you do and where?
I'm on Twitch at Kiwi_streaming. This week I've got into some Tabletop Simulator and started King's Dilemma campaign, so that will be on regularly, which is quite exciting. And
Fun.
as well, I got into the Factorio, and it looks like that will be filling up my time when there isn't Artifact. So,
how many hours are you in?
I spent 6 hours playing the tutorial the other day, and I spent 7 hours yesterday, and there's much more to come.
Damn,
Quite
that's one of my
exciting.
most played games.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you guys can find me on Twitter at Cymen90. That's CYMEN 90. I do have an idea brewing, but that's still in the early stage. But I'll see what I'll do with that. You can find our content on secretshop.gg. That is our website where you can find all our audio episodes as well as our video episodes on our YouTube channel. You'll find a link to that on our website. You will see that we're available on all platforms that matter for the most part.
As well, our producer is megaRammy at Twitter and on Twitch /mega RAMMY.
Exactly. Responsible for this high quality we're delivering to your ears right now.
Our mom.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. We hope that you'll be joining us. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for your business. Come again!